All right, greetings class. We're going to start a unit on printmaking. This is specifically about a type of printmaking known as relief printing. With a relief print, it is the raised surface that prints. We're going to cut some stuff out of a linoleum block, and what we cut out is going to end up being the white of the paper, and what is left raised up is going to be the black ink on there. It's exactly like a stamp. When you put a stamp on an ink pad, what's raised prints, and what's not there is the white of the paper or whatever color of paper you're using. I have a separate video that's going to go into detail about how to use the gouge, and I also have a video about how to effectively ink your plate and make a print. But in this short video, I just wanted to introduce you to what a relief print is and share some thoughts with you about how to lay out your image. We talked a little bit about the history of printmaking. This is something that goes back into the mists of time. And a lot of relief prints were done on wood, carving into wood, but we are going to use linoleum because there's no grain like there is in wood, and we can cut in every direction equally well. Our printmaking unit is also going to involve some art historical context. We're going to look at the work of two different artists, Kathy Kollwitz, a German printmaker who lived during World War I and World War II, and Tom Shaw, a Cincinnati artist who was making his large woodblock prints in the 70s and 80s. Kathy Kollwitz's work looks like this. And Tom Shaw's artwork looks like this. Even though these are two very different people, different genders, different races, living in different countries, their work touches on a lot of similar issues that they were dealing with, social issues, struggles that they were dealing with in their time, just like you picked a social issue that meant something to you to work from. After you settled on a social issue, I helped find an image with you, and we printed it and shrunk it down to 5x7, the exact size as our linoleum blocks. And I also gave you a piece of carbon paper. The carbon paper has a dark side and a lighter side. The dark side is what faces down on your linoleum, the lighter side up. The dark side is what actually has the carbon on it. And then when you have your image down on here, when you press down with a pencil and follow over the lines, it transfers onto the block. Once we've done this, we need to get markers and figure out how we can break up the image into black and white. And the black is going to be what we don't cut out, and what's left, the color of the linoleum, that's what we're going to cut out. So for instance, in this case, I started with a polar bear image, let's say for global warming or something like that. Now, I actually did start doing the marker on this. I wish it was just my original photo. But you can imagine the original photo before I put the marker in. But then you're going in with a marker and figuring out what's going to be raised up, what's going to be cut out. I added a factory to the background to kind of get this idea of global warming across a little better than just having the open sky back there. So there are times where you can change things. This was just a picture of a couple, and the student has added other words and symbols. Now, when you add words, they have to be in reverse. So your image is going to be the reverse of whatever you have on your block. So for instance, this bear appears to be facing off to the right, and here it's facing off to the left, because boom, just like a stamp, it has made that image on there. Now, I was concerned with cutting out, so I wanted to cut out a lot of my sky. If you cut out all of this, then you lose the ability to create a border at all. So I created a border. I literally left some linoleum raised up on here to have a border. Now, and you can see someone else has drawn a border because they too intend to cut out a lot of that background on there. If you don't do that, you may end up with something where it's, just very difficult to tell where the sky is. Now, this is a person who thought a little bit about the direction they wanted to cut things out. Like they wanted the background to be cut out. They didn't draw all these little lines back here. That was just left from the direction they, from some of the linoleum being raised up after they cut things out. And it gave it a very cool, interesting look. And they left enough of it that it kind of created its own border without having to have a big raised section around there. So you just have to think about what you're trying to do. The direction you cut matters. So again, once we've transferred this with the carbon paper onto here, then I'm asking you to get a marker and start figuring out what are the things that you actually want to be black and the things that you want to be white. Anything left the color of the linoleum, that is what's going to be white. So you're really going in here and filling in anything that you're like, I want this border, I want his hair to be black. Figuring out, you might need to get a little bit thinner marker, but it's hard to leave real thin lines raised up. You can cut thin lines, but leaving them raised as a black line, that's kind of difficult to do. So here's one where you can see it's been laid out pretty good, and now they're ready to begin the process of cutting. This is a bench hook. A bench hook is a safety device that hooks onto the bench. Makes sense, right? Hooks right onto the bench. This is so that you can push against this back of the metal here without putting your hand here. You don't want to be holding this, in which case you can stab yourself with this blade. You really don't want to do that. These are sharp on the end. You want to be very careful with them. So the bench hook is in place, and I can rotate my linoleum when I'm cutting in different directions, and that makes things quite a bit easier too. So if I'm cutting out something in the face, what I like to do is take my fingers, kind of brace them against here, and then cut. This is a little V-shaped or U-shaped gouge on there. And so you don't want to go over these lines. You just want to go, it's coming in at an angle so that it's lifting up little sections of the linoleum as you go. And it's easy to slip. So that's why you want to have this here in case you slip. And you want to go nice and slow. Sometimes I cut the other direction in an area that I want to cut out first so that it's easier to stop when I get to that area. It just kind of gives me a little trough to kind of help stop my blade as I'm moving through. I'm doing this at the moment with a number 2, which is a pretty small line, but there are other blades in here. Well, not in this one, but there's normally other blades in here of different sizes, and you can choose the one that's, it's almost like choosing sizes of a marker tip to what you're going to do. But this is like, you can think of this like a white marker on a black piece of paper, because everything you gouge is a white line, and everything left is going to print with black ink once we get the black ink on there. Okay, so that was just a little introduction. As I said, there's a separate video for how to use the gouge and another one for how to ink and make the prints, but it's a fun process. Here's a big one that I did on top of some colored paper. So we can do some fun things with like that too. That's the wonderful thing about a print, is you can make multiple copies. So this is a big one that I did of my head a while back. And if I still had to print, I could make a bunch of different ones on different colored paper or whatever I wanted to do it on. So I hope you have fun doing it. I look forward to seeing what you create. It'll be a good time.